China is a country where ancient legends intertwine with the grandeur of nature. Here each place is a page of history, written by the wind, water and the hands of a person. From snow-covered peaks to emerald dojo, from cave bindings to modern megacities, discover China for yourself, where the past and present merge in harmony. Yunnan, the edge of the mountains and spirits. Imagine how you stand on the slope of the mountain, where the air is so clean that it seems like you drink it. That is how I felt at the foot of Yunnan Snow Mountain. The mountains, which the locals call the Jade Dragon, its peaks, covered with snow even in summer, rise 5,000 meters, like guards of ancient legends. You can go up to the glaciers along the cable car, and believe me, the view from above is worth it to forget about the height for us, and then go down to the Blue Moon Valley. Here, turquoise rivers run between white stones, and the reflection of the mountains in the water is so clear that you will not understand where the reality is, and where is the mirror. Photo boldly, the frames will turn out like from a fairy tale. Do not miss Kanshan, the place where time slows down. The paths lead through pine forests, smelling of resin, past temples that seem to grow out of fog. Once I met a monk there who just smiled and said, "Here each stone is breathing," and he was right. And if you want to see a miracle created by the hands of man and nature, go to Yunnan. Thousands of rice terraces carved on the slopes, like a giant staircase into the sky. It is best to come in winter or spring, then the terraces are filled with water and turn into mirrors that reflect the clouds. Local farmers still process them manually, like their ancestors hundreds of years ago. Live in the village for a couple of days. Yunnan is not just a province. This is the place where the earth talks to the sky, and every turn of the path gives a new plot for memories. Gansu, cash treshing. If Yunnan is about the endless mountain landscapes, then Gansu is a real historical treasure hidden right in the rocks. Imagine, you go along a narrow wooden bridge nailed to a steep cliff, and under your feet a gap of several tens of meters. The wind whistles in the ears, but fear is immediately replaced by enthusiasm when magician caves open in front of you. These be honeycombs of heaven, as the locals call them, is a real miracle. Almost 200 caves, cut down in sandstone, are 1,500 years ago, store thousands of Buddhist statues and frescoes. Some sculptures are a height of a 5-story building, others are no more poems, but they all retained amazing details, folds of clothing, facial expressions, even traces of gilding. The most amazing thing is how nature and art merged together here. The moss gently envelopes the ancient reliefs, and the sunlight, breaking through the fog, highlights the faces of bodhisattvas, as if reviving them. Once I stayed here before sunset and saw how the last rays of the sun stained the rock in a golden color. At that moment it seems as if time had stopped. Tip: put on comfortable shoes. Climbing the shaky stairs requires dexterity. And be sure to take the guide, without it you will miss the most interesting details, such as secret grottos or inscriptions left by pilgrims hundreds of years ago. Gansu is not just a stop on the route. This is a place where you can touch eternity, in the literal sense of the word. When you stand in front of the 3-meter statue of the Buddha, cut right in the rock, you understand, here it is, a real miracle of light, about which few people know about. Yunnan, landscapes like from a fairy tale. Friends, if I needed to choose one place in China, where nature clearly tried to impress, it would be Yunnan. Imagine, you are floating on the bamboo raft along the Li River, and these very famous karst hills grow around you like green drops frozen in the air. The water is so smooth that the hills are reflected in it, as in the mirror, and sometimes it seems that your raft is floating right in the sky. I remember how I first saw this landscape at dawn. The fog stood on the water, fishermen in white bamboo hats launched fishing cups, yes, they still catch fish, and the sun. Be sure to visit Elephant Trunk Hill, a hill that really looks like an elephant drinking water. The best photos are obtained at sunset. The Cave of Reed Flute is an underground palace with multicolored illumination. There is a hall where stalactites form something like a chandelier, a fantastic spectacle. Lungi terraces, Dragon Range, are especially beautiful in June, when the terrace is flooded with water sparkle in the sun. Locals still process them manually, like hundreds of years ago. The advice from the experienced: take the bike to Yanzhou, this is nearby, and ride in the surrounding villages. You will see the real life of the province, the elderly playing mahjong, children chasing the ball among rice fields, and, if you are lucky, even a traditional wedding procession. Yunnan is a place where you understand, Chinese landscape scrolls did not exaggerate. They just showed the truth. Tibetan Highlands, the roof of the world friends. If you want to feel at the top of the world in the literal and figurative sense, welcome to the Tibetan Highlands. Here, at an altitude, I will never forget my first day in Lhasa. The head was spinning not so much from height as from awareness. I am in Tibet. On the streets, the monks in burgundy robes are spinning prayer drums, the air is impregnated with the aroma of linen oil and incense, and the hint rises above all this the Dalai Lama Palace, which seems to be cut out of the mountain. The most vivid impressions, Lake Yamdrok, Tibeta turquoise pearl. When the sun plays on the surface, water changes color from pale blue to emerald. Local believe that if you go around the lake on foot, and this is about 250 kilometers, you will clean the karma for several lives ahead. Monastery of Jokang is the heart of Tibetan Buddhism. Here I saw how pilgrims make prosts, they fall nick again and again, leaving traces of their hands on the stones. This spectacle touches to the core. The base camp of Everest, yes, he is partially in Tibet. Even if you are not a climber, you should drive these serpentines for a view of the top of the world. At night, it seems that you can touch the stars, they hang so low. Experienced advice, do not plan activities for the first 2 days, the acclimatization is serious. Drink tea with liking oil, a local remedy for mountain disease. Take small bills to the temples for donations. Tibet is not just a place on the map. This is a state of mind where time slows down, and the world becomes simpler and cleaner. When you stand on the pass, above the clouds, and you see how prayer flags flutter in the wind, you understand, here it is, a real miracle of light. Xinjiang, the crossroads of the Great Silk Road friends. If I had to describe the Xinjiang in one word, I would say, contrasts. Here deserts are adjacent to snowy peaks, and ancient traditions intertwine with modernity. This is the place where the East really meets with the West. I remember how I first ended up in a bazaar in Kashgar. The air is filled with spices, Uyghur merchants call buyers, and colorful carpets and mountains of dried fruits flash before their eyes. It seems like I got to the Eastern fairy tale. Don't miss, the Taklamakan Desert is the Sea of Death, as the locals call it. But do not scare the names. On the edge of the desert there are amazing oases where juicy grenades and grapes grow. I rode there on camels at sunset, the golden dunes and the rays of the setting sun look fantastic. Heavenly Lake Tianchi in the mountains of Tian Shan. The water is so saturated turquoise color that it seems unrealistic. In the summer, here you can rent a yurt from local Kazakhs and try kumis, a traditional drink from mare's milk. Ida catches one of the largest mosques of China in Kashgar. On Fridays, thousands of believers gather here. The atmosphere is so powerful that goosebumps run around the skin. Gastronomic Council, be sure to try lagman, homemade noodles with vegetables and meat. Samsu with sheep from the tandoor. Pilaf is in Uyghur, not at all the same as in Uzbekistan. Important point, Xinjiang is huge, the size of several European countries. It is better to plan a trip for at least 2 weeks. And do not be surprised at the verification of documents, this is ordinary local practice. Xinjiang is striking in his openness. Here in one quarter there may be an ancient mosque, a modern skyscraper and a traditional tea house, where the old people play chess. This is a place where you really feel the breath of the history of the Great Silk Road. Hangzhou, water and tea poetry friends, imagine a city where every morning begins with a cup of precious tea, where ancient pagodas are reflected in perfectly smooth water, and modern technologies are surprisingly combined with millennia traditions. Welcome to Hangzhou, a city that Marco Polo called the most beautiful in the world. I remember my first morning by the Western Lake. The fog stood on the water, fishermen in conical hats slowly rowed in their boats, and somewhere in the distance the melody of urchu sounded. At that moment, I realized why Chinese poets sang this place for centuries. Here you really feel like a living scroll. Do not miss, tea plantations of Lunzan, a dragon well, here they grow one of the most expensive teas in the world. I participated in the collection of leaves. It turns out that you need to carefully tear only the upper 2 leaves and kidney. And then he watched how the master fry them in a huge boiler. Movements have been worked out for centuries. Linen Temple with its 300-meter alley of Buddha. The 20-meter statue of the smiling Buddha Maitreya is especially impressive. From one look at this face immediately becomes calmer in the soul. Hufan Street is an ideal place to search for unusual souvenirs. I found their old calligraphy scrolls, porcelain bells, and even an antique kettle of the Ming era. Unusual experience. Try the Running Tiger spring water, which has been used for centuries to brew tea. It is collected from a special source, and they say that it gives tea a special taste. Counsel for the gourmands, be sure to order Lunzan shrimp, prepared with tea leaves. Boiled bamboo shoots. Sweet rice balls yuanxiu. Hangzhou is a city where time flows in a special way. Sitting in a tea house by the water, watching how the sun sits behind the Lifeng Pagoda, you understand, here it is, real Chinese perfection. And the most amazing thing, this city, preserving the ancient soul, remains ultra-modern, because it is here that the headquarters of Alibaba. P.S. If you're lucky to get to the Festival of Lanterns, consider it a lot of luck. Thousands of luminous figures turn the night Hangzhou into a fabulous world. Zhangjias, mountains that inspired Avatar friends. When I first saw these sandstone pillars ascending to the sky through the clouds, it seemed to me that I was on another planet. It was here that James Cameron found inspiration for the fantastic landscapes of Pandora. But no special effects will convey the sensations when you stand on a glass bridge at an altitude of 300 meters and look down at these ancient stone giants. My unforgettable impressions. Avatar Alley here is the same Halaloja mountain, which has become a prototype of flying mountains in the film. Tip: come at dawn, when the fog envelopes the cliffs, the spectacle is simply mystical. The glass bridge Zhangjias is the highest and longest in the world. The first steps on a transparent floor at such a height are a real test for nerves. I saw how adult men crawled on it on all fours, and local teenagers fearlessly made a selfie. Cable Road, Heavenly Gate, 7 kilometers of a dizzying rise to the famous cave in the form of an arch along the way. Views are open from which it is breathtaking. In the literal sense, the height is about 1,500 meters. Unusual experience. Try the local sanyagui dish, meat from meat, potatoes, and eggplant, which is prepared in clay pots. After a long day, the trekking is just a balm for a tired traveler. Experienced advice: be sure to take the raincoat. The weather here changes every 15 minutes. Put on non-slip shoes. Steps on the paths often wet. Come on weekdays, on weekends too many local tourists. Zhangjias is a place where you understand how small a person is in the face of nature. When you stand at the foot of these stone giants, which are more than 300 million years old, all life problems seem so insignificant. This is not just a park, this is a real natural temple where you want to be silent and admire. Great Chinese Wall, a journey through the centuries. Friends, forget everything you saw on postcards. A real Great Wall is not an even brick parapet, but a living organism, which is curling on the crests of the mountains as a giant stone dragon. I remember how I first climbed to the Jinshanlan section at Dawny Steps, out of time, cool climbs, where you had to clutch at the ancient stones, and suddenly a turn, and a panorama of the wall extending beyond the secret places that should find. The wild section of Jianghua. Here the wall preserved the original appearance. In places you have to climb on the destroyed steps, but the views are worth it. Especially impressive is the staircase to the sky, a plot with an angle of rise of 70 degrees. The little-known fortress of Kubika. Here you can see unique defensive towers with arched windows of the 14th century. In one of them, I spent the night with the local caretaker. Imagine what it feels like to sleep in the watchtower, where the warriors of the Ming dynasty once carried a patrol. The Zhuanhuaken section is the only place where the wall passes through the lake. In the summer you can rent a boat and see how ancient stones affect the water. Living stories. The descendants of the guards still live in the village of Simitai. One old man showed me a family relic, a rusty jian sword, transmitted through 18 generations. On the Mutanya section, graffiti of the 17th century were preserved. The soldiers carved their names and complaints about meager rations on the stones. Tips for real researchers: the best time is April or October. There are no crowds and a debilitating heat. Take the trekking sticks. Some areas are very cool. Find the stone marks, special stones with hieroglyphs that placed construction teams. The Great Wall is not a museum exhibit. When you walk along her ridge, you feel the traces of millions of people, builders, soldiers, merchants under your feet. This is a journey not only in space, but also in time. And you know what? After such an experience, ordinary attractions seem simply cardboard decorations. Xiaoxaiga, Crystal Kingdom of Water. Friends, if nature decided to create an ideal aquarium, she would have made Xiaoxaiga. Imagine the valley where the water shimmers with all shades of turquoise and emerald, where the waterfalls are cast off from multi-tiered travertine terraces, and the ancient Tibetan villages seem to grow from the landscape itself. Why is this place special? Lake Homelions in the Valley of Nine Villages, as the name translates, 114 lakes, and each as a separate work of art. Pearl Waterfall. The width is 310 meters. Water flows down the steps of the travertine, creating the effect of a million pearls. In summer, you can see a rainbow here, in winter ice sculptures that nature forms. Tibetan magic. Tibetans still live in the village of Zakava. They believe that lakes are the mirrors of the gods. I drank tea with yak oil in the house of the elder, and he showed the ancient Kanka icon, with the image of the spirits of the valley. Tips that are not written about in guidebooks. The best moment come at the end of October. The maples are stained with the valley in fiery red, and the water becomes especially bright. An unusual angle, at 5 in the morning, local monks make a bark ritual bypass around Lake Long Join. This is a unique spiritual experience. What to try? Tibetan momo, dumplings, with yak cheese and tea with salt. Yes, they drink so very invigorates. It is important to know due to the fragile ecosystem, strict rules here, you cannot touch water, make noise, go from the paths. But this is worth it. When you stand in front of multicolored lakes, it seems as if you were in a fairy tale. After Tsayak's Haegu, ordinary mountain landscapes seem faded. This is a place where nature has collected all its magic colors in one valley. Shangri-La, Lost Paradise. Tibet. Friends, if you dreamed of finding a real lost world, welcome to Shangri-La. This is not just a place on the Yunnan map, but a real living legend, where the Tibetan culture has been preserved in pristine purity. When I first saw the Sungzalan Monastery at dawn, its golden roofs sparkled in the rays of the sun, and prayer flag. 3 reasons why this place will stun you. Monaster Sungzal, Little Podal, 500 monks in burgundy robes. Unique tantric frescoes of the 17th century. The daily debate of the monks in the garden is a spectacle worthy of the theater. The Gorge of the Jumping Tiger. The deepest canyon in the world, 3,900 m depth, is 9 Eiffel Towers, tracking on the path cut down in the rock over the seething river Yangtze. The lake is drunk mirror surface reflecting the snowy peaks in winter. Black-legged cranes fly here, sacred birds in Tibetan culture. Secrets that only local magic moment. In the rainy season, July-August, the entire plateau turns into a flower carpet. At the same time, hundreds of types of alpine flowers bloom. Unusual experience. Try the zambuk flower made of fried barley, which Tibetans eat with yak oil. The locals mix it right in the cup with their fingers. This is a whole ritual. The Hidden Pearl. The village of Nishi with houses fees. They were built to protect against winds. Here you can spend the night in a traditional house with a stove can. It is important to know before the trip. Height 3,300 m. The first day is better not to plan activities. You need special permission to visit some areas. Best time, May-June, flowers, or September-October, golden autumn. Shangri-La is a place where time flows differently. When you see how the old Tibetan twists a prayer drum, and there are paper dragons with prayers around, you understand. Here it is, real magic, for which it is worth traveling. P.S. Be sure to go up to the Beimashan Pass, 4,292 m. From there you can immediately see 3 sacred mountains of Tibetans. Just do not forget to leave Loyan, ancient capital, where history comes to life. Friends, imagine a place where Buddhist caves are adjacent to the pioneer gardens, and in the evenings, thousands of lanterns are lit over the ancient streets. Loyan, the former capital of 13 dynasties, is an open-air time machine. When I first saw a night city with its illuminated pagodas, I realized, here it is, the real Eastern Venice of antiquity. Top 3 must-see in Lone Lunman Caves, 2,300 niches and 110,000 Buddhist statues carved in limestone cliffs. The 17-meter statue of the Buddha Varakan, her face is the standard of beauty of the Tang era. Cave of thousands of Buddhas with miniature figures, the smallest the size of a nail. Secret grotto with 8 medical recipes carved on the walls. The Temple of the White Horse is the first Buddhist temple of China. Legend says that the sacred texts were. The Museum of Ancient Tombs is the only underground museum of this scale in the world. 22 fully recreated tombs from the Han to Tan, unique frescoes with plots from the afterlife. Gastronomic travel Shwizi, a banquet of 24 dishes, which was served to the emperors of the Tan dynasty. Loyanskaya Pisces Pokolka, preparing according to the recipe of the 12th century. Peon desserts, edible flowers and honey, only in April-May. Tips from local unusual transport: ride an ancient taxi, a wagon drawn by a donkey, 50 yuan for a trip to the old city. Best souvenir: copies of tan frescoes on silk from the workshop near the Guanlin Temple. Secret: at 5:30 in the morning, monks in Lunman begin the morning service, a magical sight without crowds of tourists. Loyan is especially beautiful in April when 500,000 peonies bloom, urban symbol. In the Vancheng Park, trees are strewn with flowers so dense that it seems you stand under the pink sky. And in the evening, be sure to go to the show 1,000 Ancient Lights. When 10,000 traditional lamps are lit, the city turns into a decoration for a historical. If you're lucky, in a cafe by the river, and you will meet an old man who shows tricks with shadows, so the guests have entertained at the time of the Sun Dynasty. Do not forget about the useful services that we indicate in the fixed comments. Subscribe to the channel, like it. Good rest for everyone.